Well, hello. It is 7 o'clock Sunday evening. How is everyone? So good to see you. Still needing to do the video on my phone, so I'm going to try to get my computer at least where I can see it. If you are watching live, it'd be great if you would put hashtag live. I'm hoping it'll show me comments and stuff. Good evening, Michelle. Hi. Good to see you. Okay, drop a comment. Hello, Thomasina. Thank you for being here. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope your spring is in full bore. Ours is beautiful. We've had some beautiful days. A little sticky today, but sure is pretty here. So I'll take the spring and fall weather. So Michelle, yes, they did. They did an abbreviated service today. I did not make it. Still moving a little slow this morning, which I'm always a toss-up. But they did. They all got to be at the building together, and it was very encouraging. Brian and the girls were very encouraged to be there and to see all everyone's bright, smiling faces, and it sounded like it was a wonderful thing. So glad that that's moving forward. How about you? Did you all get to meet today? I didn't know what the stand was over in Arkansas. I didn't know what was going on with y'all's stay-at-home orders. So it's been hard to keep up. Every state's got such a different setup. So hello, Alita. Thank you for being here. Well, okay. I'll give a couple more minutes, see if anybody else wants to jump back. Oh, not back until June. Oh, what a bummer. Well, just keep working. Keep making your connections with the congregation in the meantime, because thankfully that is not the only time that we get together to worship and encourage and edify one another. It's kind of a culminating day. You've got opportunities all throughout the week, and we didn't lose those. We still have our phones, we still have texting, we still have Facebook, we can do Zoom, got all kinds of things. So we'll just make the best of it until everything gets back to normal. And I guess normal is going to be a new normal, because I don't know how it all goes. Nothing goes back to the way it was before, right? So Alita, tentatively for the 17th in North Texas. Yeah, you guys are, and we're working at, we just went into phase 1, and I think they cannot evaluate for phase 2 until the 15th of May. After that, then they can kind of just see where we are, see what's going on. So who knows? And then you add to all of that it's all really just, strongly worded suggestions. So I'm afraid people are going to get worn out with the sitting back. It's going to be hard to keep the tide back at this point. But my prayer is for all of you as this goes forward. It doesn't matter what's going on in our world, right? Our job as Christians is to do what God has given us to do, where we are, to the best of our ability. And I believe our study through Esther bears that out, because these are displaced people, but not recently displaced people. Esther was born here. This is what she knows. And yet Mordecai has done such a good job teaching her and establishing her faith that she knew still how to be a Jew, even while living amongst the Persians. And when something comes up, she's ready to deal with it. She knows who to lean on. She knows where to get her support from, and it is from Mordecai and from her fellow Jews. And they all know to look to God for that, to give him the glory for what is to come, and to ask for his help. I believe that is fully what the fasting means. And we see that, and we can all do that where we are. Do the best that we can where we are, because we're not always going to be in ideal situations where we can just do the way we would like to, right? And we can only do the best we can insofar as our ability allows, and just trying to make choices based on what we know at the time. So Katrina says you got to meet with the congregation today. That's wonderful. And I love the fact that everyone has missed that. We should miss getting to see one another. And I hope that everyone is encouraged to maybe take opportunities to spend more time together, so that that's not the only time that we interact with one another. So it's a great blessing all the way around. We can find blessings even in the changes, and then go back to the things that we know and take comfort in those things that when they're the way they should be. So pray that everyone prospers, right? And prosper in any way, including your health, but as our soul prospers, the way that Esther did and the way that we're learning. Okay, so y'all tell me, this week 4, you got to write through the rest of chapter 4, and you wrote to the end of chapter 5. Today, you read chapter 6, if you're following the plan. I know some of us have already read the whole book again, which isn't hard because it's a short book, right? You can read this in an hour easily, right? So we've read it multiple times, but we stopped at the end of chapter 5. If you're taking note about how people are behaving, if you're using the take note page or just making your own notes as you're doing the writing, what have you added to Haman's column this week? I would love to see your comments. And you also would have a new spot to comment in. We have a spot called Dangerous Friends on the Esther Take Note page. What lessons can we learn from Haman and his friends in this context? As we talked about last week, we started off this week in Esther chapter 4 and verse 9. Mordecai has delivered this news to Esther, letting her know why he is so upset and why he is in mourning. And he tells her, he implores her to go before the king. I find it interesting that it says that he orders her, at least the New American Standard does. It says, and to order her to go into the king, to implore for the people, and to plead with him for them. So it orders. But when we get to the end of chapter 4, okay, we go through the conversation back and forth. I think the idea of order here is he's being very clear. This is what needs to be done. You need to go see the king. And in verses 9 through 17, we have this huge impact moment, right? Where Esther acknowledges, she's like, okay, you're asking me to do that, but understand that I have not been called to see the king in over 30 days. And if I do this, you're not supposed to go to the king without being called. And if I go and he does not acknowledge me, I could die. And Mordecai tells her that he just says, you're not guaranteed to miss out on what's going to happen to the rest of the Jews. Her position as queen is not a protection. Certainly not in the wording of the law that Haman wrote. Now, of course, Haman has no idea, right, that she's a Jew. I fully expect that Haman did not intend to threaten the queen when he wrote that law. He had one man in mind, but he was going to take care of everybody to deal with Mordecai. So he doesn't know this about the queen. But Mordecai reminds her, this includes you. Anybody who knows what you are, if they're going to follow this missive, you're going to be endangered by this. And he says, but do not, and I love that he says, but relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. He has no doubt. God's going to protect the Jews. It may or may not be Esther, because they can't know that, right? They're trusting in the providence of God, that she is where she is for a reason, but all they know is, they don't know what God's plan is, but that he's going to save the people. And possibly she's in a position to affect that. And he says, maybe this is just the time that you've been placed here. And her response is, okay, you get all the Jews in Susa, let them know what's going on, and ask them to fast with me. Me and my maids are going to fast for 3 whole days and 3 nights. And we're going to fast in preparation for this, and then I will go before the king, and if I perish, I perish. She accepts it. It must be done, because guess what? She's going to die either way, right? If she doesn't do this, everyone's going to die, including her. Well, she realizes what she's in a position to do. She accepts it. And then Mordecai, it says in verse 17, so Mordecai went away and did just as Esther had commanded him. So again, you've got both of these people. They're making declarations. This needs to be done. And both of them, I think, are excellent examples of what we see in the New Testament when it tells us to subject ourselves one to another. She was listening to what he said when he ordered her to do this. She's thinking about it. She's agreeing to do it. And then he hears her in return and does what she asks. So both of them are this excellent example of submitting to one another and not just putting yourself above. They're both looking out for what the other needs. They're considering what the other one says. They're being respectful, and they're honoring each other. And then we get to chapter 5. Okay? It's 3rd day. They've done their fasting. Esther dresses herself appropriately, and she goes before the king. So she's doing this thing outside of her wheelhouse, going to the king when she isn't expected, but she doesn't put all the focus on her fear, right? She presents herself to him in a nice way, and she goes with a plan, and she has already enacted part of that. She goes expecting to be received. She's ready for him to receive her, as we see when we're reading this, right? She goes in, the king sees her, and it looks like he sees her. He holds out the scepter and invites her in. He's glad to see her, and he's so glad to see her. He's like, why are you here? What would you ask? Up to half my kingdom, I'll give you what you ask. He's ready to give her whatever she wants right then. But as a good lesson for us, ladies, in regards to dealing with men, she's careful with her timing. Here he's sitting on the throne, and basically she's coming to tell him that he screwed up, right? That a law that he put in threatens her life. I don't know that that would be nice to do to him in front of everyone in the court, right? So she's using some wisdom here. So she comes and she asks him and Haman to come to dinner that she has prepared. It's ready. Can you come to dinner today? And the king says, yes, we're going to be there. And so they're going to come and do that. They're going to come and eat. And I love that in verse 5 it says, bring Haman quickly so that we can, that we may do as Esther desires. He is eager to please her, right? It's very cute. Also remembering back, the fiasco of chapter 1 with Vashti. This is a different reaction, with his queen. It is also a different queen. So Esther's being very respectful. She has invited him to dinner. He's excited to find out what's going on, but he is glad to please her. So he orders Haman to come, and they go and they sit down to her dinner that she already has prepared. And while they're eating and they're drinking, the king asks her again, okay, what would you like? Why are we here? What's going on? And up to half my kingdom, I will give this to you. Again, he is ready to do whatever he can for her. And Esther, very respectfully, she doesn't act, at least from the words that are chosen, it's not like she shows any uncertainty about what's going on. She just says, if you've heard my petition and my request, if I found favor in your sight, and if it pleases you to grant my request, she uses his words, right? If this is pleasing to you to do what I ask, then I'm going to ask you and Haman to come to another banquet tomorrow. Can you come again tomorrow? And then tomorrow, I'm going to tell you what's going on. And the king says, okay, great. Haman leaves and he is so excited, right? The same whiny little boy that we saw earlier in his first interaction with Mordecai, you can just see the glee that he's so excited because now he's not only eaten dinner once, but now he's twice been invited by the queen. And oh, the honor is just making his head so big. And then as he's walking through, he runs into Mordecai again. And Mordecai does not stand up and he doesn't tremble, which is amazing because at this point, Haman has to know that Mordecai knows. He knows the law has been set, and he knows who set it because he was able to tell. Remember when Mordecai told Esther, he even knew how much money Haman was going to spend to accomplish this. So he knows it's Haman who's doing it. Well, Haman obviously expected Mordecai to be a little afraid of him, and he was disappointed. So Mordecai's not afraid of Haman, which is another shining example of Mordecai's faith, right? We're at this point, it's a waiting game. We're basically 3 months into the time frame waiting to we got a few months down the road to the end of the year. We got to get through the next 9 months and Jews are going to be attacked. So we're in the waiting game for that. There's nothing to be done until then. But Mordecai's still not afraid. He's not afraid of Haman, right? This upsets Haman real bad. And then he goes home and look at who is surrounding him. This interchange here, and then this next week we're going to read the follow-up one. But it shows that his friends, right? He comes in, he says, even Esther the queen, let no one but me come with the king to the banquet. The queen's impressed with me. But all of this does not satisfy me every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. I can't be happy with all of this wonder that's going on in my life because of this man who's sitting here who will not acknowledge me. So petty. And then his wife. Think his wife has been egging some of this on. She knows what her husband wants to hear. But look at what she suggests. Okay? This is not just, oh honey, I know, that's so sad. I wish that he would listen to this and he would do better and he would acknowledge you. No! His wife says, and all of his friends back her up, have a gallows built to kill this man. This is their answer, is to assert your authority and have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go joyfully with the king to the banquet. So, this is their plan for tomorrow. We're going to build a gallows. You're going to kill this man who's a thorn in your side, and then you get to go enjoy your dinner with the king and the queen. Ew! Just, you know, it's kind of a depravity that we don't encounter a lot. But this is where their focus was so all about them and their position. All about where they are. Because they all get to shine in Haman's glory. Right? And the response is to kill the man. Not to tell Haman, Haman, you've got all of this other going on. Don't let him bother you. You've already got an edict in place that's going to get rid of the man at the end of the year. They got a lot of things that they could tell him. And they decide to tell him, no, you just need to kill him tomorrow. You got the power, exert it, get rid of him. He's a bug. And so that's where our writing left off yesterday. And again, what an amazing set of chapters for us to use, not only for ourselves. These are good examples for us to learn from. Esther is a huge example for us here. Mordecai is a fabulous example for us. Haman is an excellent example on what not to do. How not to be, right? He's so pleased of heart, but then so deflated by Mordecai's behavior. His ego is so big that he can just carry all of this, the pride and the wonder of getting to come to eat with the king and the queen, and yet it's immediately deflated by one person's act. Just ruined it. Ruined everything. And it just, you look at Mordecai in contrast. Is Haman kind of been a fly in Mordecai's ointment right now? He's this one, he's the stinger. And Mordecai's not letting Haman bother him. He's just still doing what he believes is right to do. He knows that Esther is working her plan. I don't have any indication that she told Mordecai what her plan was, just that she was going to go before the king. And he's just going on about his day. But Haman's day is just ruined. And so this next week, we get to jump into, it's just chapter 6 and chapter 7 this week. We'll complete both of them in the writing and the reading. And chapter 6 and chapter 7 and part of chapter 8 all takes place in the same 24-hour period. Because the dinner is here, right? They've been to this dinner. Haman goes home, complains with his family. They have these plans for the gallows. Well, during that night, between dinner number 1 and dinner number 2, the king can't sleep. And that's what we're going to come into on this next week. We're going to look at what happens just in one 24-hour period to set all these things on their head. Okay? We've got Mordecai who's bothering Haman. Haman is so full of himself and his position and how much the king is holding him up over everyone else. It's going to his head that the queen has invited him to dinner twice. And yet God is going to use all of this to set some things in motion. And the king can't sleep. And this is going to take us back to what happened at the end of chapter 2. Mordecai did a good thing. He was the right man in the right place, and he protected the king. And we're going to see the king respond to this knowledge about this man who saved his life. And Haman is going to get his comeuppance. And what he expected and what he and his family expected to happen that day that's not what we're going to see. And I don't know about you, but I love it when justice is served and served well. And it's very satisfying what happens here because Haman is so evil. But you're going to cover 2 chapters, but we're not covering a lot of ground in time. We jumped from 5 years into the marriage to now, a few months have gone by. We're 3 months past that initial switch over into that 5th year, and now we're just sitting. We've had those 3 days of fasting. We've had the day when they have dinner, and now we're going into the next 24-hour period, and we're going to be there for the next 2.5 chapters. Okay, really through chapter 8, 6, 7, and 8 are all that day, and then the rest of the book is what all jumps to the end of the year. So this is kind of why the timeline helps. So you can kind of see, it makes a huge impact for me when I realize we took a little bit of slowness getting the message to Esther. There was some back and forth and talking to Mordecai, and he's in mourning, and these things are going on. It took us a few months to get the edict out. Mordecai tells her what's going on. They go back and forth, and then she asks for 3 days. Well, guys, after 3 days, this all moves like this. Are we prepared spiritually and just in our mentally, I guess, and emotionally? Are we prepared that within 3 days' time to act when something like this comes up? A lot of times we like to, put these things off a little further. We're not sure if we're in the right place. And while we should always be mindful and try not to jump in too soon, I wonder if not most of the time we're more hesitant, and we don't lack the ability to just jump in and know what to do at the right moment. Know when that opportune moment is to do something. For us, it's even sometimes talking with our children. We so don't want to break their spirit, or maybe seem like we're jumping to the wrong conclusion, but they're doing something instinctively we know needs to be stopped, but we wait. And then once we wait, we've waited too long, and then it's hard to correct it at all. But how can we have more confidence in dealing with that? Well, if we are, to the best of our ability, studying, and we can be clear that what that was wrong for them or wrong for them to do, then we know we can step in and do that and not have a weight of guilt or feel like we're pushing. In our interactions with other people, when is it the right time to say something, and when is it the right time to say nothing? Right? Esther shows a lot of maturity and a whole lot of wisdom in the way she deals with her husband here. Not to mention her husband, who's the king, and her relationship's not quite like all of ours. But we can learn from her to be careful of our timing. Okay? Sometimes you have no choice. Something has to be said, and it has to be said now. But in reality, she had some time, because she's got till the end of the year before this thing happens. So she's got a little bit of time, and she takes her time with the king. She doesn't push. She doesn't get emotional. She doesn't start crying and wailing in fear and telling him how afraid she is. She doesn't try to play on his emotions. She stays very matter of fact. She invites him to eat, which, frankly, food is a good stabilizer. It's a good equalizer for things. People are happier when they're fed and they've enjoyed the meal and they've enjoyed being with you. All of that. There's nothing wrong with that. We have the saying, way to a man's heart is through his stomach. There's a reason that is said, and it's not just applying to them, all right? It's true in most cases. If you want to get someone's attention, if you want someone to be aware of you and maybe to listen to you, you serve them in some way. You do something for them, and you connect with them. Well, she did that through a meal. She used a meal to accomplish that. It's a simple thing, and she was not so afraid of what was to come that she needed to jump in and just blurt it all out. She was willing to wait and test the waters and invite him to dinner again. Can you imagine? That would be, it's like, ooh, do I ask him again, or do I just tell him right now? Something in the moment made her judge that it needed to wait. And so she just asked him. She said, if you are happy to please me and you want to do what I ask, I would just like to have you over here for dinner again. Would you please come join me for dinner, and Haman can come? And she does it, and she keeps it nice and simple. And then, as we're going to see, when it comes time, she is still respectful, but she holds nothing back. She's very clear, but she states the facts as they are. She makes no excuses. And it reminds me of Abigail. Abigail being able to make this speech to David and still be respectful to her husband while stating the fact of what a worthless man that he is. He's a worthless man, but she tells David, forget that part. If I had been home, it's my responsibility. This should have been for me to take care of you and your men. I want to do what's mine. I'm apologizing for not being where I could have taken care of this and saved us all this trouble. And then she also has the ability to tell him with wisdom what's really the right path for him to take, and that she knows he's wise enough to take it. Esther speaks with the same kind of wisdom that Abigail shows. And that's something that we can learn from. She went prepared, and I don't think it's a small thing that she spent 3 days spiritually preparing for this. I don't know how many times we spend that much time preparing to have a conversation with our husband that we need to have. Whether it's about something on our hearts, if it's a concern about our children, it's something we're worried about him, it's whatever it is. Have we been able to take 3 days and give it to God for 3 days? Talk to God about it for 3 days. Talk it out with God. And think about nothing but how God's going to help me do this. I'm going to talk to God about it, put the burden of this on Him, and get some clarity. Not how am I going to try to find all these other fixes for it. Esther didn't go talking to the commanders. She didn't go talking anywhere else. She kept her focus on the person who could make the difference. She didn't even go talk to Haman and ask him to try to rescind it. Because what good would that do, right? Because how does Haman respond to Mordecai? How's he going to react to the queen trying to undermine him? She shows a lot of wisdom here, and we can learn from that. So it's a very simple story. It's told just right here. Here's the story, but there is so much for us to take from it. So again, I would love to see what you guys are pulling from this, and what you're wanting, what it is that what you're gathering, and how I want to know how you feel after you read, you read chapter 6 today. So you've gotten to, if you're caught up with today, you have read the next set of events, and we're up to dinner. Tomorrow we get to read about dinner. We're going to write this out, and then by the end of the week we're going to get to this second dinner and all these things that happen. Well, you've read that, and you're going to write that. Are you feeling the energy that I think the writer was putting into this? But feeling the time mounting, feeling this, okay, things are progressing very quickly, and just seeing how I just don't know how else to put it other than God's providence is at work. I don't know how you explain at this time the king can't sleep. At this time, they happen to read this part of the Chronicles to him, and at this time, he comes to have this disposition about Mordecai. Very important timing, because it's going to make an impression on Haman, right? Whenever we get to, it comes into play with how they respond to Haman and what Haman has prepared. Because part of what comes about for Haman is learning what Haman has planned for Mordecai, this man that the king has honored, and this man who did this wonderful thing. God's timing is amazing. It's not miraculous, but it's not anything. Men could not have pushed this into this time frame this well. God's providence at work, and it is really encouraging to read that and to see hindsight being 2020, how that all works. So let's see. What are the questions for 4 and 5? So you were asked in the study builders, what is the king's response to Esther? We keep looking at this. I'm always looking at this with the assumption that the king is growing in his ability to manage his relationships, right? He's got some growth patterns going on here. So what do you see in the way he responds, and in the way that she asks, and how he responds to her? I would love to see what your thoughts are on that. Let's see, Haley says, Haman having to honor Mordecai has always been one of my favorite moments in this story. The shame it puts on him is great, and it seems to be a foreshadowing of what is to come at the banquet later. Yes. Esther's wisdom and patience and calmness has always struck me, even when I was younger. It's really very... I just don't know how you keep yourself together. I do, on the one, I think she must have a personality that is calmer in general. I would not have her poise that she has in all of this, but it's a huge impression that God would take care of it this well. He's going to take care of the Jews, but not only does he take care of the Jews, he takes very good care of Mordecai. And he deals justly with Haman. And it really is. It's just like, wow, that was so amazing. And as you get to looking at the story, when Haman has to come home and tell his friends and his wife what he had to do that day, his plan that day was to go out and hang Mordecai, right? And then he has to come home and he has to tell them what he actually had to do that day. And their response to that is like, okay, they're starting to get a point. And I want y'all to see if you pick up on, see if it stands out to you what they think the factor is, why Haman is not having his way in regards to Mordecai. They put the glory to somewhere else. It's associated with who Mordecai is. And again, we have an instance where God's name is not mentioned, but you can see him being referred to. Because they're going to point out, because he's a Jew. Because he is of Jewish origin. This is why this is happening. They acknowledge, okay, well, maybe trying to kill him was not a good idea. And now they're not so impressed with Haman anymore. He's not the be-all, end-all. And so not only does he lose their respect and their backing, they also acknowledge Mordecai. Then he's going to receive punishment because of that. So it's a fabulous turn of events over the next 2 chapters. So going through it, if you're doing your Bible marking, it's primarily going to be, like I said, I use brown for pretty much everything Haman does, because he's just evil. He's sinful, and it makes it stand out from the orange and the pink. Right? So he does that. But then when you get to any place where there is some glory acknowledged, then either underline that in yellow or make a note of it in your margin, so that you can remember to notice there how these people, they have a change of attitude. They're acknowledging something's going on. They're not becoming faithful by any stretch of the imagination, but they are acknowledging a bigger hand is at play here. And so it's worth noting that. So, but for the most part, most of chapter 5, it's going to be pink, except for Haman from verse 9 through the end. That's just brown. Or you could do it orange and brown, where they recommend that they kill Mordecai. And as you go into chapter 6, reading through that, this is going to be orange. And I don't know, I wish I had a really good marker to gleefully mark Haman's just to start having to walk Mordecai around, because I mean it's just amazing. I can visualize his sourpuss face while he's also having to honor him. And can you imagine having to walk through the streets? It's not that he's just leading the animal that Mordecai is on. He's having to tell everyone how wonderful Mordecai is. And it's got to be in front of people who he knows that they all know that Mordecai doesn't respect him and that he's mad about it. So the whole scene is sad and funny. Just the absolute despair that Haman must be going through. So you can mark that, with your oranges or your brown, however that is. And you could even use green if you wanted to here, because it's in chapter 6, because it's highlighting Mordecai's righteousness and his good behavior. Maybe put a box around it that way. It's your call. Always with the Bible marking, kind of how that strikes you. And then when you get to chapter 7, and then you've got this dinner, again, it's going to be pink for Esther and orange for the acts of the king. But make note, pay attention to how everybody responds to what's going on. And this is where we're going to see the big change in the king's behavior, I think. This one has the most contrast to chapter 1, because again, he has an opportunity where he's drinking and it's emotional. And he is going to take stock of himself before he reacts. He's aware of how he behaves when he's been drinking, and now he's very emotional. and he shows a lot more maturity than he did back in chapter 1 with Vashti. So I'll let you all, get to your evening. If you have questions, you're always welcome to ask. I hope that you're continuing to enjoy it. It's going to go very fast from here. We're going to blow right through the next 24 hours of these events. All this stuff's going to happen. And then it's setup time, and then we're here. We're here at crunch time at the end of the year. And again, God's providence is going to be shown in how thoroughly he takes care of the Jews. So I think we've got a lot to look forward to over the next few weeks. And again, don't forget to take note, to look at, Israel's faith and their integrity. The fact that the Jews in Susa, Esther she trusted that she could call on these people to fast with her. She trusted that Mordecai could call on them. That tells me that they knew there were other Jews who were faithful being here. She knew she could count on them to do that. Mordecai does that, and it says they did. So they did that with her. And then she's able to go into this with the knowledge that she's not all alone. She may be walking in front of the king by herself, but she's got the support of the other Jews in the city. And she knows that, and that's valuable. And guys, that's something for us to take away now, right? All of this being separated and being stuck at home, and if we're in a situation where we're stuck at home and the people we live with are not believers, maybe it's just us. Maybe it's just you trying to do the right thing, and you're trying to study, and you miss being able to go to worship more because that's the only time you get to interact with those people, because at home, nobody's like that. You're not alone. As long as you have Christian brethren who are praying for you, praying with you, and going through what you're going through, even though you may be alone in your space, you're not alone spiritually. We're never alone from God when we are in a right relationship with him. He walks with us all the time, is always looking out for us. So while all of this stuff is going on, we need to take advantage of what is available to us through these relationships that God's created. With Israel, it was this nation of his people. And they have a relationship based on how they've been taught how to worship, how to focus on him. It separates them from the other nations. These are other Jews who have been doing that to one degree or another, even while in captivity. Esther knows she can call on them. She knows that they're there. Mordecai knows he can reach out to them, and they all lend their support. We've got that in the church here. That's how that should be. Reach out to other people. If you know other people are alone and struggling and don't have a house full of people who are helping them to be stirred up spiritually and physically and emotionally and all of that, reach out any way that you can, even now, to help them fill that gap. Pray for them. Tell them you're praying for them. Reach out and pray with them if you can. Do that. You've got all kinds of things available to you to bridge this gap so that you don't have to go into the next battle feeling like you're alone. And I would suspect that some of Esther's courage, is because she didn't feel alone. She was not just making this argument. She wasn't just making this request. She's not doing this by herself. Her maids are helping her. The Jews are helping her. Mordecai is supporting her. And she's reaching out to God. Guys, if you guys put all of that on with your armor, you're going to wake up tomorrow and be stronger. No matter what comes. Whether it's sickness, whether it's health, whether it's going back to work, whether it's jobs are gone, it doesn't matter. You're going to be stronger because this is how God builds us up. He has us trust in him because he is our strength. And then he says, you need these other relationships around you because they will strengthen you. And you're not alone. So let's make use of that. So I don't see any more questions. Oh, Riley says, see, that didn't come up on my phone. Riley said, Esther had been building a good reputation with everyone around her, and especially the king leading up to this. It served her well when it was time to ask the king for this huge thing. Yes. And is that not true of every relationship that we're in? You can't you can't come handle yourself quiet and remotely and expect someone to respect what you have to say if most of the time when you come it's with whining and complaining and overly emotional and hard to be in control. If you're not in control of yourself, then it's really hard for people to listen to you, to pay attention to you. And she has had this reputation that she's been building, and it is very important. And just showing this level of maturity. And again, we've talked about we don't know how old she is, but if she's even just as a young woman, she's got all of this maturity, and I can't help but think that a lot of it comes from spiritual knowledge and training. You're taught compassion when you're taught to obey God, and she just was taught how to be respectful but forthright. And she does. The king obviously trusts that he can trust that what she's coming to say. He's not worried. He wants to do what she's asking. He's eager to please her, and that very much has something to do with the reputation that she has been building and the relationships that she's been growing while she's been queen. So we need to be mindful of that. You can't show up today and expect respect and honor if you've not been showing respect and honor yourself leading up to today. If you want to in a moment of crisis be heard and to be respected, at the very least you need to make sure that you're being respectful leading up to it, and it'll help. It doesn't guarantee it because they don't have to, you're not in control of their behavior, but you make your odds much better that someone is going to respond well to you and they're going to mirror how you're behaving. She's calm, she's together. He's like, hey, what can I do for you? And he's glad to be able to do whatever he can because she's not a thorn in his side. So keep that in mind. Dig into your study this week. You only have, you got 2 chapters to get through, but they're pretty exciting chapters. So let's see how God turns this around. And also, when you get into chapter 7, notice the similarities between what happens here versus what happened back in chapter 2 and chapter 3. Go see how all of this plays out, and just how, okay, we're just going through the same motions again, but a different result. And so, again, God's providence, but it's interesting to me how everything is done so explicitly, so thoroughly, that everyone is going to be made aware of what's up, so that what comes, there's no surprises at any point. So I hope y'all have a good evening, Lord willing, that the rest of your week will go well. And, if the Lord wills it, next Sunday I will meet you back here. But in the meantime, I would love to see you on the page during the week. I love when I get to see your scripture writing. I love it when you share your thoughts about what you're studying. And everything you share is an encouragement to somebody else. It encourages them to keep on. It helps them to see new insights because maybe they didn't see it that way, and to start connecting those dots. So keep sharing those things. Keep that conversation going, and we will see you all later in the week. Thank you for being here. Good night.